Hi and welcome back. I made this 3D printed Greek gods chess set and I want to share with you some of the problems and solutions I came up with while modeling Medusa. Here you can see the scale and the quality of the print. It's optimized and it's printed on the Bambu in PLA. So here in this model I have the original and you can see some problems already. There are holes that go through, so in other words the inside is hollow. And that's okay because these are solidified, but there were way too many polygons. For one, I had over 1,000,000 just for the body itself, and I was still coming up with manifold or non-manifold edges. So I also solved one issue related to the hair. I came up with a simpler way to do hair here, and just giving the impression of snakes with something that is fairly low geometry. And I wound up modeling these snake heads that I didn't need either. So jumping in, I'm looking straight down here. I have a straight down view and a clear palette, nothing in it. And I want to share one way to start. So the first method is for the hair. We're going to create a cylinder and let's scale it down, but first add some geometry. Tab into edit mode, and I'm going to just add some loop cuts, and let's add maybe 5. That's enough here to make this object bend. We can add a few more, but again, any 1 or 2 you add is going to add a lot more polygons. So object mode again, let's turn this over on its side, and we'll do 90 degrees for that. And we're going to add now, Shift A curve. So if you go to curve, and if you're not familiar, there is usually Bezier or circle. Bezier is the first one. Type S to scale it up, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And I'm going to do it negative 90 degrees, so the curve is up here. And I just want it to be roughly along the same axis as the cylinder. So now we want to apply this curve to this object, which is a little bit counterintuitive. Go to your modifiers, add a curve modifier. And then we're going to choose the source, and since we only have one curve in our project, we can just click on it here and say Bezier. I'm going to type N to get rid of that palette, and you can see that it snaps to that. Sometimes you'll need to change the deform axis depending on what way your Bezier is facing. Mine's on the X, so let's do it that way. And now we're going to add an array modifier. So we're going to add another one, array, and for this one it's a little counterintuitive, or a little more counterintuitive depending. For one, we need to drag the array on top. It needs to be first. And then we need to choose which one of these. Now you would think right off the bat that you should go with the same axis as this is on. This is on the X deform axis, but in fact no, that's not true. I don't know why. Just try and fiddle with these numbers and stay uniform when you're rotating. So for instance, I rotated this 90 degrees, I rotated that 90 degrees, and that seems to work. So try to apply some 90 degree logic. Once you get the factor, so that's just like the space figured out, then you can add to the count. Great. And now the shaping of this thing is done on the Bezier curve itself. So if you click on Bezier curve, tab into edit mode, you'll be able to see what you have here. And in this case, my array goes past the edge, which is fine, but we can change that if we need to later on. For one, if I click on that anchor point and I move it up, or I rotate it, I can then start to bend it and twist it in space. Also, these handles just act exactly like Bezier handles in, say, Illustrator or any other program. The tighter you get to it, the more crinkled up the corners are going to be. And of course, you can always change that by adding more polygons to your model. But in this case, we aren't going to really need any more because we're going to create too many to begin with, and we want this to be a low poly model. One thing I'm going to show you here on the end is If I tab back out, click on the object and reduce the face count to about right where that point was on the Bezier. Now if I click on the Bezier again, tab into edit mode, and select this one on the end, I can shrink that by typing Alt S, and that will just shrink that point size. So now you can make tapers and stylistic changes to the curve, which is pretty cool. And that again is how I did the hair, just to get a big knot of hair for her. The next part of this is creating the scales. So I'm going to tab out of here, select everything and delete it, and then go back to the top view. For this, I'm going to hit Shift A, Mesh, and I'm going to go with a plane. And then I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to make copies and changes to it all within edit mode. First things first, I'm going to add a loop cut across and on top. And then I'm going to grab the edit vertice and with my transform tool, grab the top, grab the bottom, and move these in a little bit. Something like that. Once you have it looking the way you want, grab the plane selection, select them all, type E, and pull it up and just give it some dimension. That's enough right there. Okay, let's give these some curves. I'm going to type the number 2 to pull up the edge selection. Control B to pull out, and scroll my mouse wheel to add more more vertices if I need them. But again, this is going to be pretty low poly, and adding too many of these, even though now it seems like the right thing to do, is probably not necessary. So again, I would round it, maybe just something like that. That's more than I need, and I'm not going to do them for the top because it's just unnecessary. Okay, that looks all right. I'm going to go to the top view, and I'm going to hit Shift Z to go into X-ray mode, and then select everything. Shift D, and then X will bring this over, and I want these edges to be touching. I'm going to do that one more time with everything. Shift D and then X and move it along, and this time I want to have a space right here. Okay, now let's orbit around to the side view, select all of those shapes, and let's rotate them up just a little bit. I want to show you something real quick. In my other model, I rotated those too much and it created problems in the print. You can see that the scales are lifted too far off the surface, and that wasn't good, so you just want a little bit. Let's go back over. So I have those rotated. I'm going to go back to my top view, select all of these on this side, G to move it, Y on this axis, and then G, and then X to move it on this axis. Get these to overlap, and I want this little point to be just a little bit over the convergence of those others, and the reason, again, is so that we don't have any space. Lastly, I'm going to just drop these two together, and you can look at it from the side and see just how much you're dropping it, just below the surface, just like that is good. Okay, so now I've taken care of any fill problems. I'm going to tab back out and go to my solid view, and I have one object here. So we need to wrap this around a circle. Go back to top view, and I'm going to add an array to this one. And we can change the factor. In this case, we're going to change the X factor to whatever is giving us a good overlap, 0.8. And then we're going to change the count here to 16. That's plenty. Now you can leave this modifier on if you want to make changes to it, but I know that's pretty good. And in fact, I'm going to reduce it just a little bit because, again, trying to reduce poly count. I see that I don't have any weird spaces that I can tell. This may be an issue right here. So we'll go back and fix that before we proceed. We'll add the array one more time. Good. Now we need to add this to a circle. Shift A, curve, and this time we're going to choose a circle curve. And it's small, so we'll type S to scale it up a bit. And then we're going to rotate it. So we're going to rotate it on the axis here. Type N to open this up, and let's just go with 90 degrees. And now select this object and add a curve modifier. Just like the other one, the curve is going to come second, and we want our Bezier curve to be the object. There's going to be some overlap, so we're going to select the Bezier curve, type S, and we'll scale it so it fits. Don't scale the scales, scale the circle. Okay, that looks pretty good, and I think this will interlock okay. There won't be any space problems anywhere, so we shouldn't get any non-manifold edge errors. If I like that, and I think that will be okay, I'm going to go ahead and apply these now. These modifiers, you can't go back and re-add them afterwards, so you just have to be sure that this is going to work, but it does simplify the workflow a little bit. Shift A, and we're going to do like we did on the last one. We're going to choose a curve with a Bezier. I'll scale it up, and I'm going to rotate it on this one, -90. Scale it up some more. We can always scale everything back down later on. Okay, once again, we're going to select that ring. We're going to add a curve modifier, just like before. And if your curves are both named the same thing, use the eyedropper to select on it. There it is. That looks good. And it's on the x-axis, and it seems to be lining up the way we want. So now we're going to do an array modifier once again, just like the first time. We're going to drag it on top. And then we're going to change this factor. And I think we need to do Z. We'll find out in a minute. Nope, we need to do Y. There is no rhyme or reason that I can determine, but this just seems to be what works. By the way, you can always flip this by going to the negative x-axis, and I'll show you why that matters in a second. So here, one more thing I'm going to do on my offset is make sure there are no holes when the array is applied, and that looks pretty good. I don't see any holes up in that area, so I'm happy. And let's now add and in this case, I'm going to go 0.7 to move it that direction on the line. Let's add some more. Now, the reason I want them facing this way is this going to be the end of my tail. Let me select on the Bezier, go to Tab, and we'll go into Edit mode. And with the Transform tool, I'm going to select on that end point. I'm going to type Alt-S again, and this will shrink the end. That's pretty cool. That's what I wanted. On my original model, it looked like this, and that was an important element because I wanted it to wrap around the base. And if I want to add points along the way here, I'll grab the pen tool, hold down Control, and add a point if I want it. Go back with the selection tool and move points wherever they need to go. And again, just like before, if I need to add geometry or subtract geometry, click on the origin, click on the original geometry and shrink and expand this number to get your snake to pull along. Now this looks good, and say we have it set up in our model in the pose that we like and we're happy with everything. In order to make this printable, we need to do a couple things. First of all, let's take a look at our poly count. And if you go to stats here, you can see this object has 177,000, which actually isn't too bad. I had upwards of 1 million before. So if I go and I apply all these modifiers, we should be okay, but we are going to need to do one more thing. We need to make it solid. So solidify modifier is going to exponentially add geometry. And if you up this number further, it might add some more geometry as well. What this does is it gives it thickness, and the printer doesn't seem to have a problem with anything that's at least 0.06 or 7. So that's just been my experience. If you want to reduce this poly count further after adding the simplify, apply it and then decimate. And I have a video that shows a little bit more on how this works and where you can optimize your model. I'm going to export this just to see. Looks good. It doesn't have any non-manifold edges, so it doesn't need any repair in here, and it should print okay with supports. I hope this helps you out with your project. This is Medusa the Bishop in my new Greek Gods mythological chess set.